We're now going to move on to the final panel of today, exploring the intersection of craft and design for future creation. And our moderator, Cyril Zaamet, will introduce his panelists. Please.
So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy. We were pressed by time, but we've been given an extra 5 minutes, so that's good. We're supposed to start in 5 minutes, so we'll start earlier. My name is Cyril Zaamet. I'm very happy to be here for the inaugural edition of the Design Doha Biennial. And tonight, I'm also delighted to be in M7 because it has been a very strong milestone for Qatar in terms of promoting design and craft and also the practices here. So tonight we're going to discuss about the cross-pollination of traditional craft techniques and the emergent technologies. I have 3 distinguished guests on my left, and I will ask them to introduce each of you very briefly because we have a very tight schedule. So over to you first, Nada.
So my name is Nada Debs. I'm a furniture designer and product designer based in Beirut and Dubai now. Basically what I do is I work with craftspeople to elevate craft in different regions, starting with Lebanon, Syria, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and presently Uzbekistan. So it's really kind of like my mission in life. I grew up in Japan, and my family moved to Japan through the Silk Route in the early 1900s. And in a way, I'm returning to the Silk Route through craft.
Thank you, Nada. Next on my left is Azizbek Manoubov.
Yes. Hello, I'm Azizbek. I'm head of cultural cooperation in the art and culture development of Uzbekistan. And we, as a foundation, work a lot on the crafts, on the applied arts, and we have different projects to support our artisans in Uzbekistan, to promote their works, to showcase them abroad, as we did here in Doha Biennale.
Thank you. And last but not least, the local talent, a Qatari designer, Abdelrahman. Over to you.
I'm Abdelrahman Muftah. I'm a multidisciplinary designer and based here in Doha. I work with a lot of artisans in Doha. Unfortunately, we don't have that big of a number. So a lot of my work is about investigating materiality and taking tradition and trying to push it forward and creating innovative solutions.
Thank you. So we definitely need to connect you both together. Anyway, let's start with the very beginning. The power of craft goes beyond the tradition, right? It's a very powerful combination of the identity of a nation. But today, obviously, sometimes people see craft as a testament of the past and not necessarily an element of today or the future. But to me, the legacy of it is a kind of the legacy for the future. And the UNESCO have said recently that traditional craftsmanship is the most tangible manifestation of an intangible cultural heritage. So we start with the beginning. We start with you, Azizbek, with your country, Uzbekistan, where craft is almost everywhere. How did craft evolve throughout the time, and how is the transmission from a generation to another, or to someone who wants to adhere or become a craft person but not coming from a family?
Thank you, Cyril. Yeah, in Uzbekistan, craft is everywhere. I can say that. We have really strong tradition of handcrafts in Uzbekistan. It's expressed in different forms, starting with the wood, ceramic, textiles, carpentry. So everything is there. But the way how it's transmitted is quite specific, I would say. At least for us, it's a purely family thing. When we have a craftsman who is transmitting the knowledge from generation to generation. So, and what is specific is that usually it's the grandparents who teach the grandchildren. So basically, parents send their sons to their grandpa or grandma, and they take care of them, they teach them, they show them, they share the experience and knowledge. And there are families who are working in this way for 9 generations, 6 generations, especially from Tashkent, Bukhara, Gijduan, Samarkand, Khiva. So all of those ancient cities, they have really strong tradition of craft. And coming back to your question, and the very nature of this transmission within the family. It's a good thing, it's a beautiful thing, but at the same time, I think there is not a problem, but there is a specific factor, feature of it. And I'm speaking now I'm not a designer, I'm not the craftsman, I'm a project manager, let's say. And we are working to help them, to support them. And I have been working with them a lot during 3-4 years. So I saw how it's within the family, and it's difficult to go into the family, to integrate to the family. There are, of course, some institutional platforms, art schools, institutions where they can study and work. But again, they are all, the students are from the craft family. So, yeah, it's good, it's beautiful, but they stick to the tradition exclusively.
Thank you. So that where you come eventually, Abdulrahman or Nada, because you basically have this interaction with the designer. Your brand is based on craft specifically. You launched it 20 years ago. But when you go to an artisan or a new person, how do you create a dialogue between you and someone, as Azizbek has just said, who's not used to an innovation aspect?
So that's exactly what I experienced when I visited Uzbekistan. There's a really big disconnect between contemporary craft today out in the world and Uzbekistan, which has been completely unexplored. So the craft remains to be really the traditional ways. So for me, the way I went into the project was to actually build trust. So I explained and showed a lot of images of what I have done with traditional, let's say, Syrian craft, and how I transformed that craft into a contemporary piece, but I kept the essence of the craft techniques. And so this way, when I build that trust from the craftsman, then I'm able to introduce something new. And this is what we did with Tapchan that you'll see at the Uzbek pavilion here, is where we actually, when I worked with the master, he really understood that I'm not there to intrude or change anything. It's just altering in a very subtle way.
Yeah. And Abdulrahman, you're interested, according to you, I quote, you're interested in reviving lost forms and functions and repurposing them into today's world. You recently visited Morocco, for example, and you met some local artisans. You said you kind of lack of artisans here in Qatar, but how do you integrate new technology? Because you're a young generation of designers, so you have plenty of new technologies have been given to you when eventually some other generation did not have. So how do you naturally integrate new technologies in what you're doing?
Yeah, that's a very heavy question.
Yes, I know.
I mean, there's a saying for all designers is form follows function.
Yeah.
And sometimes those functions or those forms have been not in use. So I'll just take Sedu weaving, which is an amazing weaving technique that they use in Qatar. And what I decided to do is, because it's such a unique weaving technique from the GCC region, not just to Qatar, is to kind of recreate the thread and create palm fiber. So then we use the palm fiber to create a carpet, a traditional carpet. So although it functions the same way and it looks the same way, it just has more of an innovative approach. And that's kind of where it comes even to work with artisans, is something that I was taught in my MFA program at VCU was to 3D print, because you can create samples super quick, and it's a really interesting conversation, especially when it's cross-culture, when you can't really carry that you can't really talk to them in Arabic or in English, but as designers, we use our hands, we draw, and we create small samples that are exact to size, so then you kind of minimize the margin of error.
Yeah.
So I guess mostly in my practice, I kind of use a lot of 3D printing as a prototyping material rather than an end product, or perhaps using technology to kind of push material that we have locally here in Doha.
Yeah, thank you. Now, collective questions. There's always this kind of fight between design and craft, which one is the more noble than the other. 15 years ago, when I had the chance to do a design fair in Dubai, when I brought craft to that show, people were looking at me, some of the design galleries, as I was a fool. I was like basically breaking up the market because, you know, design is design, should not be mixed with craft, right? But obviously, and luckily it has changed. Would you agree that craft is more the how of an object and design will be more the what of an object? This is a very open question to all of you. What's your relationship? You mentioned function of the design. What the difference between the two?
I think there's just this confusion of trying to segregate things when things shouldn't necessarily be segregated. I remember I had a panel discussion at Fire Station where I was curious to know what is the difference between art and design. And the conclusion of that entire panel discussion is to just label ourselves as creators.
Yeah.
And I think whether you're an artisan, craftsperson, designer, artist, chef, or we're just people who make stuff at the end of the day with different disciplines, obviously. So I guess that's it to me.
What about you, Nada?
For me, I think it's really when people start working the traditional craft, actually they stop thinking about what they're doing.
Yeah.
You know, they're just continuing what their grandparents said without any thought or questioning.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I think design is about questioning the actual reason. So when I started working in, whether it's mother of pearl inlay, Syrian craft, or any of the crafts, even in Uzbekistan, I started to ask myself, how did it start? Why did they start carving flowers or plants? Or why is foliage so important in Uzbek craft? And this is where I would question, and then my answer would be, okay, let me see if I can challenge the craftsmen to do a straight line instead of a curvy line. And then I think what it does to the brain is actually, it surprises the mind. It gives, you know, it's like thinking out of the box. And that actually gives a cue for the craftsman to say that it's not against the law to actually do something different from what they've done before.
Yeah.
So it's really the training of the mind. We stopped using our minds sometimes when the craftsmen just think that it's not right to change anything of the past. It's like almost...
Can I be provocative and say eventually craft is the art of repetition?
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
Yes, it is in a way. But I remember I took a Persian carpet and I cut it in a shape. I think it was zebra skin. And I showed it in my showroom, and some people started to say, "Astaghfirullah," you know, which is like, how can you do such a thing? And I didn't mean to ruin anything that was done in the past, but I said, you know, it's only a carpet. It's not something sacred. And so this is how I realized that people are stuck in a certain way of thinking, and design is really introducing it in a new way.
If I can just jump in, something that you said that's super interesting is, and I noticed that in Morocco, is the craftsman is so used to creating things that people want and creating a specific form and just repeating that, that I think it's one thing that I heard which was really sad in my trip is, and I think you mentioned it as well, is craftsmen would hate for their kids to practice that craft. They actually want to send them to university to get a better education because to them that's not necessarily, I mean, to them it's a poor man's job, which I think is a shame because that's how we're losing it, and that's how we're losing Sedo, for example. We don't have a lot of Sedo weavers because it's almost as a poor man's job.
It's a perfect transition to the next question that I wanted to ask to Azizbek, because you recently initiated some new project in Uzbekistan to really kind of open the doors to these craftsmen and craftwomen, to open an opportunity for them to either work with a designer like it was for Nada, but also eventually integrate some new technology. Can you tell us a bit more about that, and how is the reaction of the Uzbek craft people that you have approached for this?
Yes. Again, I think I will tell as an observer, right? Because I'm not doing it myself. I'm not doing actually. But being a person, being an organization, institution which is trying to help them, I can tell with confidence that it is not the easy process to integrate them, to open them, to make them work with the designers, with the new people who are coming from outside. Yeah, and with the technologies too, of course, because when NADA came first time, they started just to work with Sorajidin. Of course, it was a super good experience. It went really well, and finally we have it here, our beautiful Tapchan. But in the very beginning, after like very first trip, Sirajuddin came to me and like, look what this lady wants from me. So yeah, it's not easy for them to be open. But again, and we come back to this thing that they were kind of closed in their families. I don't want to have only the negative connotation that it's something which is, but at the same time, that's true. And that is why we tried to help them. We initiated this program with NADA, this project. We have working actively with the Michelangelo Foundation within their Homofaber project. And we launched master classes in school where we brought some international students around the world, the designers and craftsmen, the young one, to Bukhara, and we connected them with the artisans, with these old gentlemen who are working in their workshops, and they spent 1 week together. It was a beautiful experience for them. And for example, Shokhrokh, that is something also very specific, because the young guy, the bright guy from the family of there are 9 generations of ceramists. It's a Rahimov family from Tashkent, very famous family. We were able to send the youngest Shokhrokh to Athens, to Greece, to spend 6 months now with the contemporary designer and craftsman there. And now they are producing a piece which will be showcased in Venice in the Homofaber exhibition.
Yeah, so that's the point. So I think this is a point that you like to mention because we had the chance to discuss quite often together, Nada. The key is education, right? So education is the door, and you will definitely agree with me as well. You just mentioned your recent studies at VCU here in Doha. Education is the door to this new technology, right? So what's your take on this, Nada? Where do you bring the education to let's say a very settled artisans? How do you approach them to look at your iPad, work with you with your pencil, or because I saw you working with a pencil basically, and I'm not disrespecting you saying this, you're not a maker, so you need those guys to work for you and to work and realize what your brain put into a draft. How do you work with them? Because you had a long tradition of working with Syrian and Lebanese that you saved a lot in Beirut as well. Yeah.
Actually, they never look at drawings, so it's really frustrating because we work so hard on doing drawings and no one looks at it. So what I do is I really do a lot of 3D renders so that they can see visually what it is. But I'm a big believer of really prototyping. So we start quite immediately on especially the craft technique, because that is where I really enjoy, and that is where I'd like to focus on, not as much as the form as the actual technique. So I start with them experimenting with all the techniques. We make some prototypes, then I enlarge the piece a bit more, and then we get bigger and bigger. So I work in very small steps because you can't speed up a learning process so much. I mean, it's many, many generations that have been stuck in their system. So here we can't just sit and break. So we have to really drop it like step by step.
Yeah.
So, but then they start understanding, slowly.
A collective questions, but I would like you, Abdulrahman, to start with the answer. I mean, now it's obviously the elephant in the room. We need to talk about AI at one point, because obviously even I, who have strictly zero talent in drawing, can put 3 words together and I'm coming up with a fantastic creation, if I may say. But at the end, if we really understand well what AI is about, is an amalgam of things. It's not necessarily creating, it's just like looking at what is the nearest of the words that you have put together. Is AI a threat to craft and design?
I mean,
I always have tough questions for you.
yeah, I don't know why.
Looks like it's...
I think, I mean, I personally do use AI for some things, and I think AI is a great tool, and I think it's a tool. I don't think it's a solution. I think it can enhance creativity, but it can't really produce a full blown out project for you. I mean, as of now, as of 2024, I don't think it can do that yet. But I see AI as a really interesting tool. And even just using AI requires some sort of creativity. It needs it needs you to create something, and it needs your words and your descriptions for it to be able to create a render, let's say, or some text. So I don't think for now, but I don't know like later, but I think for now it's not a threat at any, it's a tool.
It's a tool.
Yeah.
Nada, you agree?
I'm still finding where my thoughts are on
Yeah.
AI because it's really difficult. I'm very far from it. But I do agree that you need to really know how to use AI to your advantage. But whatever the case, we have 5 fingers, 10 fingers, and we need to use them. So I think craft will not disappear in the near future. And I think so we need to find that balance between AI and the hand.
Yeah.
So the hand is still where we feel a soul, and
You
and
have
the
that.
soul
You
is
have that. Say, sorry
transmitted.
to interrupt you, but I mean Nada's motto, if you don't know, is handmade, heart made.
And
right?
heart-made,
So,
yeah, because I mean, it's not just the hands that work. It's also there's an engine behind the hands, which is our passion, and our feelings. So we need to find a way for AI to help that and support that part. I definitely need the new generation for that. I mean, I'm far from it.
I'll teach you how to do it. It's so easy.
Good, I really need that.
so if we go back to a more traditional way, like we go back, I don't want to take Uzbekistan as the only country because the pattern is the same in every country in terms of craft, right? So, but for you, Azizbek, what would be the most challenging element for a generation to embrace craft? You said something, Abdurrahman, was very, very important, is like nowadays there's a lot of young kids who do not want to follow the legacy of the parents because it's no longer cool. You can get millionaire in TikTok in 2 seconds and spend your life doing plates for 3 pennies or whatever. So, I mean, maybe it's for both of you, Azizbek and Abdurrahman first, but how can we make craft, let's use this word, sexy or design? Is that through eventually new technologies? Do you think that could be an opportunity?
You have difficult questions today, Cyril.
It's the end of the day, it's okay. But up to you, whoever wants to answer.
So when I first started working with craft, I noticed that many people rejected it because it actually looks a bit boring, like not exciting, not like the new contemporary bright colored pieces that have been out in the market. And so for me, it's also really just a change of mindset. Like I started to use the word craft cool in my, just verbally to say craft is cool. Like it's a cool thing to do craft. And it's really just a change of some words that can actually trigger a different way of thinking. So yeah.
As I was telling you today, earlier, once the photos from our exhibition were posted in a social media, not my friends, not my family who texted me, it was artisans who texted me because I was in contact with many of them and I'm still in contact because we are working closely. So they were the ones who started to ask questions. They were asking what is next, what are the projects, what we can do. So they are really interested. So that's basically this for us. And I mean, institutionally, what we can do, we can launch different projects, we can participate, we can explore and find new cooperations, new platforms to showcase the works, to help them and of course it will push them to be more open, and to the young people too. So that's the way I think.
I mean, I completely agree. I think it's institutes like Design Doha and M7 and Liwan and Fire Station, VCUQ, and I mean, specifically here in Doha, that really inspire and create opportunities that then you, as simple as showing a piece in a gallery, kind of solidifies it. But also, I think another aspect that we've seen like a huge shift on is from the events of October 7th, we see a lot of people being more cautious of what they purchase. And I think that is slowly reflecting into design and reflecting into fashion. On just the whole consumerism cycle is being changed, and now something that is made by a specific person sitting in a specific place means so much more than something that is mass produced.
Also identity, you know, like that's a very important aspect of craft and design today. So
yeah. Also the fact that probably, and you touched upon it earlier on, that new technology can also help you in your research of being sustainable, or eventually being more performant, or having a less carbon footprint. So is it really as you were saying earlier on, a very good tool for it? New technology for this?
I think it provides insight, and it takes sustainability more forward, because I hate the word sustainability.
Yeah,
sorry, everyone, because
that was my next question.
Yeah,
I hate it too.
It's so like greenwashed.
Yeah, exactly. For me, sustainability is really about sustaining craft and sustaining the work, and you know, they want to sustain a living. That's how I look at sustainability.
And you also, I mean, with your work, Nada, with the work some of the craft people in Uzbekistan and yours as well, Abdurrahman, is also the transmission of the object, right? I think it's important, because you were saying that since October 7, people eventually have a mind shifting a bit, which is good in a way that now we don't necessarily need to purchase, but just like purchase to keep it longer. So how do you, when you create an object, Nada, how do you think about having it for not only one generation, but maybe 2 or 3?
Yeah, I mean, I like to see myself as creating products that are timeless.
Yeah.
I don't really like fads, like quick, gimmicky things. So they might not be wow items, but basically there's small changes in things that have been done in the past. So the tapchan, for example, that is usually a 4-post kind of bench, 3 meter by 3 meter 4-post, and it's quite heavy. And in this case, I just made it a bit lighter and a bit more soft and curvy. And this is still acceptable, I think, by the Uzbek people. It's not too drastic. So eventually that can become a classic in that their eyes can adapt to it easily. So in that way, I feel like we can sustain something in that way. It's just small little changes rather than a big, drastic, crazy piece, you know?
And going back to that word, sustainability, I mean, when I had the chance to visit some atelier of craft people in Uzbekistan, they already or still use a formula that now the world is absolutely looking for it, because, you know, it's organic, it's only use natural pigment. So is there a chance for these, let's say, older generation of craft Azizbek to become the solution of the future? Or the source of the solution of the future?
Maybe it serves as the source. You know, it's all about the balance. If we bring some designers, if we bring some consultants, I don't know, we work with them, we open the world to the young generation, but of course we do not deny what we already have, and what we have, it's beautiful. And all of the techniques, all of the patterns, all of the dyes, for example, the technology of having colors for ceramic, for wood painting, it's all that we have now, and we can just, it's the way how we adapt it, how the interpretation of it can be done in various ways. So yes, it's all about the balance, I think, how we can again, as was Nada saying, that it was little by little, and now they are like friends with Sirajuddin. You became close to each other, I think. And again, in the beginning, it was a bit difficult, and then step by step, and now we have this beautiful collaboration. So I'm sure that we can have more of it.
So, Abdulrahman, do you believe that, let's say, young talents or rising talents will be able to keep the dialogue open? You specifically, you have part of your DNA that wish to revive those lost forms or product or material, but it doesn't stop you to eventually look for a new material, right?
Oh, it never stopped me from...
Or can we, I mean, sorry to interrupt, or can we really call it new material or just a different material? Because I don't know if we can create something new, really.
I feel like in the context of Qatar, where design is such a young industry and we have a number of crafts that you can count on your hand, I feel like there is always room to grow and room to be inspired by other countries, by other cultures. But again, something that keeps on going on my mind is that there's a project that I worked on, which was a residency at Hinat Salma, which I kind of collected dates and tried to create date leather. So there always is an innovative way to take a material and push it forward, and perhaps creating not necessarily a new material, but an innovative way to use that material, or even just maybe even take it back to the way that it was supposed to be used. So I feel like there is always room, especially in Qatar. Everyone says that it's a desert, and they assume that a desert doesn't have an ecosystem, but it's a very rich ecosystem. There's a lot of sources within the country.
But you're a young nation, right? And then in opposition almost to Uzbekistan or to Lebanon, who have this very long tradition of craft, when you want to create something or do something new, you have a white canvas in front of you, right? Does it help? Because you're not necessarily blocked by those burdens of hundreds of centuries of tradition, as we were talking in Uzbekistan or eventually in Lebanon?
For me, it does help, but there's so little inspiration you can draw. So I think there's some VCU professors here that if you tell them a mashrabiya, they're going to tell you again, a mashrabiya again and again and again and again. So I feel like there's little room for... There's a lot of inspiration. It's just making sure to look everywhere. But it's a blank canvas.
But could eventually, let's say, a digital program help you to reinvent a new mashrabiya, or does it come anywhere, indirectly anyway, from your head?
I think that would be cool.
Yeah?
I think that would be cool. I know this guy, Ala Bazari, who did virtual mosque, which was amazing. There's this other artist, Qatari artist, that is doing I think she's part of the Biennale VR Sadu, which was also interesting. So there's always ways to push it, even though it's not perhaps an end solution. Someone can pick that up and like move that forward, and that's our job. Like as the youth, like to perhaps create something until I reach or I'm bored of it or I'm tired of it or I can't move it forward, for someone to take it and move it forward. I guess that's how I see Qatar, especially now.
Nada, would you be tempted to buy a digital experience?
Not really.
Not really.
I really feel that I need to touch physically and feel. I'm sure that there's a way. I really do want to connect with technology. I'm still really trying to rack my brain to see how.
What blocks you?
There's a bit of fear.
Okay, so you have Abdulrahman to help you now?
Yeah, you can help me in that part. But it's very, it's almost the opposite of where I come from in my work. But I think that it's necessary to keep my eyes open and to see how it can help me.
I mean, going back to your studies at VCUQ, for example, Abdulrahman, were you introduced to material, or were you only working on digital platforms?
It was a mix of both.
Okay.
It was a mix of both. It was a lot of jumping back and forth. Especially one of my classes went to Souq Waqf, who has like an artisan center. There's like a couple there, but it was talking to them, talking to the artisan. And actually, something that just came into my mind is what Nada said is, you can't really design for something that you don't know how to do. You need, like you as the designer, need to learn it a little bit, so then you understand the way to design around it.
Also, we have to remember that design is based on function. So we need to see if we really need these items that we're going to design. So that's something that we need to really consider.
But the technology, again, can show you if it works or not work because of the binding of the movements of the object or if there's an articulation. So why, again, would you be eventually afraid of that technology?
Yeah. No, I need to educate myself in that, for sure.
I'm not putting you in the middle of the fire. I'm just wanting to know because I'm also in a situation where I'm not a designer, I have zero talent, but I've seen a lot of design. And I really believe that, as you were saying, if you don't put your hands in the dirt for once or twice, you don't necessarily understand the, how do you call it, the essence of a maker, right?
I think one thing Neda would agree on is technology can't give you the solution. Like, even if you 3D model, 3D render something, and then you actually do it, and then you realize that it's not functional at all, just because the clay is too thin or the wood is not, so it needs that soul.
And it's for Azizbek, it means that those long years of apprenticeship that those craft, for example, people in Uzbekistan are going through, this is a necessary base, right, to answer what Abdurrahman and Nada were saying, that you need to know your basics, right?
Yes, in a certain way, maybe that helps.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily what is necessary, but it definitely helps if there is some basis. I don't know. But at the same time, if you look, as you were saying, that when it's like a white canvas, it also helps. So, but nothing stops him to take a ticket and come to Uzbekistan and see something, you know.
We definitely organize that after the talk. Nada, you wanted to add something?
No, I was just thinking of, like, whenever I think about craft or I explain craft to people, I also talk about cooking. So when you're cooking for someone you love, and you actually, the person feels the flavors in the food. If you're angry when you're cooking, the food is really not good. And how can AI transmit that is the question, you know? So
you're cooking with AI as well, Abdurrahman?
yeah,
Sometimes.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, we're almost there. I just wanted to not necessarily wrap up straight away, but I think it's important to, as Abdurrahman really said it nicely, it's a tool, so we should not be afraid of it. But at the same time, you have this experience, Nada, of really speaking to them. I mean, and Azizbek is the same. I mean, you told me before the talk, Azizbek, that you're opening a residency in Tashkent in September, and specifically for craft and for makers. Why are you going into that direction?
Again, because we want to create the platforms where it will be easy for the artisans to come to the art residency. There are some people, there are some designers who are residents there for some period. They work, they talk, they discuss, and they explore together. Because again, I'm repeating myself, but to find this institutional ways how to support them, it's not easy when you talk about AI, well, for some of the artisans, it's even difficult to Google something new, you know. But, they need to, especially the elder generation. So that is why we will have, inshallah, this beautiful art residency in Tashkent. We will plan to have a art and crafts biennale in Bukhara next year. So, yeah.
And also, I know it's a technical point here, which is, for me, quite striking because it might help the young generation to remain in action. Uzbekistan has a very active policy in terms of taxation for artisans. Can you briefly explain that, please?
Yeah. That's the good thing we have, actually, because there is specific legislation for the artisans. As soon as you get the certificate that you are the actual artisan, let's say.
A recognized one.
The recognized one, and it's, as I know, it's the kind of board of artisans from like a master's, you know. And once you get it, there is a tax preferences like benefits. You don't pay certain taxes. You have some institutional benefits. So it's a cool thing for them.
So basically, you have a tax incentive for artisans. they pay half of the usual tax, right?
Even less.
Even more, yeah, okay. So do you think for young generation there could be an incentive? Obviously, we go back to a very practical aspect like money, but do you think it's also good to see that basically, okay, if I'm successful, I'm paying less tax?
Yes, it works.
You agree, Abdul Rahman? I mean, you don't pay tax here, but...
Yeah, you see,
It's very
in another part of the world we do, right? So, but that would be eventually an element to motivate people?
I think, personally, I think money is one aspect to motivate people to go into craft. I think that is a great initiative. I think it would move it forward.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's the only solution. I think it's one of many. Yeah.
Nada?
I mean, I never even thought about that aspect, but yes, there are people who are concerned about finances for their families. And so, yes, of course, if you're saving on taxes, it's an incentive to keep craft going. But I think craft is really something that comes more from the heart rather than financial.
So we're going to end this discussion by thanking you, Abdul Rahman, thanking you, Azizbek, thanking you, Nada. I think and I hope that the conversation was insightful. We talked about money, which is very vain of me, but we finished with a touch of emotion. I just want all of you to wish Nada a happy birthday because tomorrow is her birthday. So we finish the day with this. And we have a little something for you, Nada, so it's just coming up. So I don't want everyone to sing happy birthday, but the heart is there. So we're finishing with the heart, and then there you go. We have something for you. She'll be in the plane tomorrow, leaving us to Las Vegas, correct? But I think... So there you go.
Thank you so much.
There
Wow. Thank you.
Voilà.
Thank you. That's so embarrassing.
And I wish you all a very nice evening. Thanks for being here. It's been a long day. Thanks for being at the first inaugural Design Biennial in Doha. And the Design Forum continues tomorrow, if I'm correct. And we leave the floor to Dr. Yelena. Thank you so much, and have a nice evening.
Thank you so much.